I think one of the biggest issues here is there's a lot of comics that are just stuck in the small community, they're happy. They're happy with, hey, I have an open mic.
You're listening to Comedy Goes Town, where we investigate why Albuquerque, New Mexico has no designated stand-up comedy club. My name is Sarah Kennedy. Is Tuesday a big night for comedy? You might be surprised to know it's one of the more lively comedy nights in Albuquerque. Currently, we have a mic at a brewery. The infamous Garage has a late-night session where you can run jokes. And most weeks at 8 p.m. Mountain, no matter where you are, you can tune into the BS show live on the internet, recorded in Albuquerque and hosted in part by Robert Buck D. Gipson. Buck is a performer who's hosted shows, headlined, and otherwise told jokes throughout New Mexico, El Paso, Phoenix, LA, and elsewhere. This is on top of being an on-air DJ for not one but two local radio stations. He is busy. And he is out there, and he observes what happens in the Albuquerque comedy scene. He is not shy about sharing his observations with his guests and his co-host Six on the BS show every week. The show gets an extra boost from the high production value provided by Larry, the show's producer and an absolute whiz behind the camera, and the microphone, and editing, and making flyers. Larry's amazing. If Buck or Six, Larry, the guests, or even people in the comments think that you're trash, they will say it in no uncertain terms, and they name names. It's a bold approach, and while some in the comedy community accuse him of being a bully, Buck is motivated to take this approach because of a deeper mantra that he's adopted. I often watch his shows on Tuesday, and I've heard him lay it out explicitly on multiple occasions. Don't hurt the baby. I had to have him on to describe what it means to not hurt the baby, and to get his perspective on how Albuquerque comedians get in their own way, how he'd fare with a comedy club, and what he thinks that we need to do to take things to the next level. First and foremost, I asked him what he meant when he said, don't hurt the baby.
You have a new child, it's your new baby. You're very overprotective. You don't want anyone hurting it. You don't want anybody mishandling it. Just doing anything that you perceive it being wrong, not right whatsoever. You're always loving and you're caring for it. And actually, I didn't make that up on the fly. I've been thinking about that for some years. Actually, once I got comfortable in my comedy, I felt like that before I started comedy. That's why it took me so long to even get started in it, because I just love comedy as a student of the game, just being just a fly on the wall or just being a fan. That's what took me so long. I was getting pushed by so many people to start, and I was like, nah, I don't want to hurt the baby, man. That's my baby. I don't. And then once you become on the other side of not just a sibling, but the parent, then you're like, whoa, hold up now. It's not just about you hurting the baby, it's about anybody hurting it. So that's where I came up with it from, just looking at it from all angles and all perspectives, specifically to Albuquerque and the comedy community. That's exactly where I came up with it.
I also asked him what he thought we needed to sustain a comedy club here.
Our side. I could always go the logistics side, the side of money, the side of buildings, the side of all that. None of that matter. I think that's the easiest part of it, to be honest. I think if we just look at ourselves as the comedy community, are we really ready for one? And this goes back to what you said about hurting the baby. I started 7 years ago, and I know the OGs in the game. I love the up and comers. There's been a lot of people who've been hurting the baby. And when I say that, I just mean not sharing knowledge, not being inclusive, not being supportive, not being good. All those things go into what I feel like is hurting the baby. As far as us having a comedy club, if we had one right today, Sarah, there's going to be a lot of people who are doing this. It's the last day of them doing this. From what I learned, I started here in Albuquerque. I've done bars, breweries, and all that. Once I start getting booked in real comedy clubs in major cities, it's a whole new ballgame. It's a whole new level of professionalism. Everything from running over time, not showing up inebriated, not showing up drunk, being ready to shine in that time frame that you have each and every time. This goes to hurting the baby. If you don't do that here in breweries and bars and clubs, you're not going to turn it on when we have an actual comedy club. I don't know how many comics we have here in the city right now, or people who label themselves as comics, but I look at a comedy club as the pandemic when it first started 2 years ago. It's going to wipe out a lot of people because it's going to show you who you really are, show you if you really want to do this, or show you that you can't do this. It's just going to be different reasons. I look at it from, if we do start a comedy club, will we have enough commodity to keep it going? We don't want someone from out of town to come in and they're the faces of our club, but we who drive this, we're giving the consumer, the people who want to come see comedy, because we already know that's there. We already have people we know for a fact that want to see comedy on a regular basis. But when you do it as a club, it's the quality of comedy. It's the professionalism. It's how you carry yourself. It's how you don't hurt the baby, how you care for it. And it's more than it's just being a collective group of individuals. It's us all together, and we're uplifting that club. It's not good. Whoever owns the club, that's theirs by paperwork, but that's going to be ours. So I think, to be honest with you, we haven't had a comedy club. It has been a blessing in the past, but with the group that we have now, it can be done because I see a change. I don't see the separatism. I don't see the, I'm just comfortable over here, so I won't do this crowd. I don't mess with this person because they said this, all that catty stuff. I think that's gone. We're ready for a club. Now we're at the point where who I was looking up to before and who I thought were the comedians, they won't be around if we do have a comedy club. I think a lot of people just love to have that in front of their name, but we know who's really out here working, and not just working, can actually carry their own and then give back and give information and answer questions and do all this other stuff for other comedians who don't know, but they're willing to learn.
Since he performs out of town so often, I asked him what tools he thought the comedians needed for their tool belt before heading out of town and performing for non-local audiences. His answer surprised me.
If you can make a group of people here in Albuquerque laugh, may it be a bar, a brewery, a regular club, these people, half of them don't even know it's comedy. The other maybe quarter have never been to a comedy show. Then the other ones are there for you. If you can make that room be engaged, laughing, paying attention, in spite of people drinking, people talking at the bar and all that, once you get to the comedy club, you know how easy that is? That's what I learned. I was like, what? We live in a cheat code. We live in a cheat code. We're doing this. You could do it a couple of times a week, a couple of times a month, whatever. Once you get your chops about yourselves, this is what I learned personally. You go out of town, and I remember the first time I went out of town, I was like, oh man, I hope I kill this. I hope. And then when I got done, I was like, wait a minute, these people were sitting down, receptive. Either they wanted a show or they wanted to be a part of the show. And I was like, this is cake compared to back home, because you've seen it, the rowdiness, the drunkenness, you have to control the crowd and all that good stuff.
I've mentioned before that New Mexico is a big state for film. Movies and TV series like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul employ lots of people while they film here, and they get a hefty tax break to do so. With so much industry hanging around, I've often wondered why we don't see performers here interacting with industry professionals left and right. I brought this up to Buck, and of course, he had some amazing perspective on this.
It's not up to them, it's up to us. It's up to us. Stop looking at ourselves as, oh, open micers, little Albuquerque. Hey, it's that. I'm telling you, I tell people this all the time. Stand up is 90% confidence, 10% funny. If you're confidently saying something, it can turn funny to a lot of people just because of the way you say it. I think one of the biggest issues here is there's a lot of comics that are just stuck in the small community, they're happy. They're happy with, hey, I have an open mic. Okay, what is this parlaying to? I'm always thinking about what's the next? If we're stagnant and doing the same thing, how in the hell can we get upset that the bigger people aren't even paying attention if we're not pulling our own selves out of what we consider is small time? I get asked all the time, how did you get this? How did you get that? Because I didn't limit myself. I'm not saying no to anything. Do I know how to do it? No, but I can learn, or I can kill it the way that I do it and make them take notice. There's stuff that I'm doing right now that I had no idea that I would ever be doing. It wasn't a dream of mine, but it turned into something that I love. And it's way bigger and over the head of what I would have thought about 2, 3 years ago. And I think if we all have a mentality of we can go anywhere, we can kill it. I that's what I like about the I call them the new school of comics that we have right now. They're not listening to the stuff that I was told 7 years ago from who I consider the OG. I'm like, what? I don't want to just tell jokes here. Like, I think once that mentality changes within us all of where we're bigger than life, we can hit any stage. That's when the bigger people will take notice. Hey, let me go check this person out. Or another thing, Sarah, promote yourselves. We have something that makes us the neighbor of everyone in the world. This thing right here. I can go to somebody's social media and see comedian all over it and get the scrolling, and it's reading the diary of Anne Frank. What makes you funny? How did you get comedian? Promote yourself. You can get so many eyeballs on you, or just create the buzz. That's what I did. There was 3 types of people who came to see me do comedy the very first time. The people who wanted to see me fail because they didn't like how I presented myself. You have the people who want to see, well, is he actually funny in real life, or is it social media funny? Or the people that support. Don't matter. All 3 of them came and paid. It don't matter. I think that's the big thing. We're not taking advantage of promotion on social media, any type of platform, to where people who aren't living here can see you. And then they'll say, wait, who is this person? That's what causes the buzz. That's what has people saying your name, or it gets to the right person and they want to see you. I think that's the biggest thing. Change the attitude of the small town, and then that kind of correlates with promoting yourself outside of the city of Albuquerque.
So on this podcast, while we shine a lot of outside looking in light on what stops Albuquerque from having its own home for comedy, it's important to take time to hear from the people willing to give open and honest feedback from within the community itself.
If a comic here opened up a comedy club, it would flounder very quickly. Because your focus and your favoritism and all this other stuff, it messes it up. It's a baby we were talking about. It's like it's a conflict of interest. I really believe this, and it works in anything. If you're good at something, that's what you stick to. Now, if you're not good at something, that's fine to go to someone who's better at it and learn it. But this is how I've always run any like comedy show or whatever that I've produced. And I've had to wear different hats. If I'm the headliner, I can't produce the show. I can't do it. Hey, I'll pull in someone else who's not a part of it, who knows the entities, and be like, who do you think should go what, and get the input. I just really think when you're wearing too many hats, one of the hats are not going to fit, and you're going to just go to the hat that you like the best and focus on that, and everything else is going to be lacking. We've seen it sometimes. There's comedians who don't know how to host. Why? Because they get up there and they try to do their set. That's not what hosting is. You have to learn, not saying you can't do both, but if you're the host of a show, be the host, don't be the comedian. It's okay to say funny things if other comedians didn't uphold their part, but at the end of the day, you're the ones that keep the show going on. Now, if you're the promoter, you have nothing to do with the talent. You can't tell the talent what to do or whatever, because you don't know what it feels like to be up there. I'm trying to think of someone else, or the producer. If you're the producer, produce. Don't try to be on the show. Yeah. Because you're going to be lacking from your producing roles, because you're going to be worried about making the crowd laugh, and your jokes are going to hit and all that. If you have a role, just be focused on that and kill it. And if everyone kills their role, the whole thing is a killer. That's how I look at it.
Comedians from New York during a very specific time will often recall comedy legend Patrice O'Neal freely lobbing open and often brutal feedback at them in clubs, forcing them to reflect on their writing and their performance, and inspiring them to grind harder and get better. I have often heard comedian Jess Wood, who's here in Albuquerque now, recount this personally. In a way, we're pretty lucky to have someone in our scene right now who's willing to take on that role and push us to go further and do more. Maybe that's exactly what it's going to take for us to finally be ready to sustain a home for comedy. This has been Comedy Ghost Town, produced and hosted by comedian Sarah Kennedy. If you'd like to find out more information about the podcast or me, you can find out more at my website, sarahkennedy.com/comedyghosttown.